Welcome. We are here with Omar Dzlieri, the director of the film MiCERZ. Omar, thank you so much for taking time to talk with us.
No
Omar,
problem.
what is your film about? Let everybody know, what is your movie about?
My movie, MiCERZ, is about the rarely seen underground world of stand-up comedy. A lot of times, you've seen movies about underground rock music or underground genres, underground explorations of other, form of arts. And there's no really movie that kind of shows what it's like to be, an open micer and just go to these, the kind of relationships and situations that happen there and relationships that you form. So I wanted to make a movie about that.
Why stand up? Are you a stand up yourself, or what's your connection to the
It's
stand up community?
it's kind of a weird thing. I was never really into comedy or consider myself a comedy writer or a comedian. But in 2019, I sold a sitcom to Fox that was a comedy, but it was based off of my life, and they were like, "Hey, you normally don't write comedy, but a good way to keep your chops sharp is to do stand up." So that's how I got into stand up, and I was doing it originally just to get better at writing comedy, and then I went to this open mic in North Hollywood called The Fourth Wall, and I just met the most wild, out of control people I've ever met in my life there, and I was like, I gotta tell a story about you guys. You guys are insane.
And,
So
and
yeah,
so you've only been doing stand up for a couple of years while making the movie. That's so
yeah,
you got sort of sucked into it.
yeah.
How has that been going for you? I mean, the pandemic last year sort of shut things down here in LA, in the stand up community.
Yeah.
What's that like? You dive into stand up and then it shuts down.
Well, I got into there was about a good year and a half of it before the pandemic. But what was really interesting to me is I had a weird experience with starting up with stand up. My experience with stand up is a lot different. Well, everyone's is unique, but mine was particularly unique because I, I live next to the J Spot Comedy Club in Inglewood, right? And it's one of the only black-owned comedy clubs in all of California. And for whatever reason, when I only started doing stand up about 4 months in, I only had like a 5 minute set, but I, kind of talked my way into there. And then for whatever reason, they just kept letting me go up. So a lot of times before you do an actual comedy club, what you'll do is you'll hit the mics for a while, you'll develop a 5 minute routine, and it might take you a much longer time to go to to start doing shows and stuff. But I was lucky enough that J. Anthony Brown, let me do stand up at his club, 6 months into my stand up career. But I think maybe maybe I'm the only white guy doing stand up there for tax purposes. I don't know. But it's been interesting because like I still have yet to book like an actual like show at like any of like the Haha or the Laugh Factory or anything. But primarily I'm a filmmaker first. I'm a director and a writer first. So when I started making this movie, I kind of took a break from doing stand up unless I was going to the J Spot for whatever reason to hang out or whatever, do 5 minutes. But filmmaking has been my top priority.
Did you do any stand up on Zoom during the pandemic at all? Did you try to do that?
No, no. The one of the actors in the film, the character who plays Dave, his name is Joe Menente. He actually owns the open mic that the movie is based off of. And what he started to do is he started to do open mics at on Zoom and like on online and conference call open mics. And what he would do is literally, because he had a business to run, the guy was about his money. So what he would do is like after we'd finish shooting a scene, he'd be like, "All right, everyone shut up, go outside," and he'd run inside the office that where we filmed, and he would just like put his laptop on, and he would just like, "All right, guys," and he'd just get into his whole thing and start doing mics. I'm like, this guy's, the guy loves comedy, and so I did not participate in Zoom open mics because when the pandemic happened is when we started filming. But I did bear witness to how comedians just like loved to the love affair that comedians have with comedy, where even if they have to get on a Zoom conference call just to work on some jokes, they'll do it. And I witnessed that while we were filming the movie, and it was kind of serendipitous. And I was like, yeah, these guys are into it.
Nice, nice. Tell folks. So you told us it's about the wild scene of the open mics, but tell us the story. Who are the characters in the movie, and what do they go through?
Sure. So our movie centrals is centered around two main characters, two guys who couldn't be more different. Our main character Arnold and Dave. Arnold is your kind of schlubby, like lazy, kind of do nothing guy who moves here and is driving for rideshare services, and he gets another DUI license suspended, and basically he leaves his girlfriend's apartment, and is kind of directionless, and his car breaks down outside of an open mic, which is where he meets Dave. And Dave is, a failed musician who has dedicated his life to stand-up comedy, to hosting open mics and building a home for people to, to kind of foster and nurture their craft. And as Arnold starts to bear witness to the open mic scene in Los Angeles, he, who is someone who's always wanted to try it but has been too scared to get on stage no matter how many times he signs up for an open mic, gets the courage and the support to kind of start his path. And I think that along the way he meets these cast of characters who couldn't be more different than each other, but for some reason are uniquely fit to be kind of like a comedy family. And it's a movie about relationships, competitiveness, jealousy, but also like finding, getting out of your own way, how to, not self-sabotaging, and also realizing that, these characters, both of them to some degree, have to realize, and more so honestly about Arnold, that Arnold's journey is to realize that, life is a marathon and not a sprint, and nobody is Chris Rock in a day, as is said in the movie. And when I was writing the script, there was one kind of quote that kind of stuck out to me, and it was Dave Chappelle who said this in his special, but it wasn't a joke. It was like kind of just something he was just talking about. He was like, he mentioned the fact that when he told his dad that he wanted to be a stand-up comedian, his dad was like, hey, well, you're never gonna, I'm paraphrasing here, but he was like, you're never gonna, you're crazy if you think you're gonna be a multimillionaire, da, 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 da. And he's like, well, mom makes $40,000 a year and she loves what she's doing, so if I can make $40,000 a year doing stand-up comedy, I'll be happy. And his father was like, well, see, now you get it. And I think that's what Arnold is early on in the film is representing, kind of that hunger that a lot of people do when, no matter what career they're in, they move out and they want to be famous the next month, or they want to be rich the next month, or they want to be the biggest real estate tycoon the next month. And it's like realizing that there is a path to doing what you love for a career without trying to meet these lofty expectations, and finding a way to build a life and have a life for yourself.
Yeah, it sounds like a universal story that not only applies to stand up to everyone's life, which I think makes the best types of stories, is the ones that we can all relate to, but also makes the best types of comedy, because you want your audience to relate to the jokes you're telling. So it sounds like you're on the right track with it. What was the production process like? You're shooting during COVID. What was that like? That had to be hard.
You see, like, okay, all right, so let me try and figure this out, how to put this into so many words, because the production process was very much like the movie. Okay, so we originally were we originally were working working out with a company to try and sponsor the film for like $60,000 and give us a real budget to work with, right? COVID happened, they were like, see you later, guys. So there was no budget, and COVID shut, this is literally the first week of lockdown. Everything goes into, everything shuts down. And I call up like some of my boys and like who are comics and actors, and I'm like, yo, I know you guys aren't doing anything. I know all these restaurants got shut down. Let's make a movie. Like, let's do it. Like, you guys like the script. You are, I already kind of had my cast in place, for the most part. And then so basically, to be brief, I needed a DP who was going to be able to make a lot out of a little, because again, we had no money, like nothing. And I call up my friend from college and I was like, yo, I need a fashion photographer. And he's like, why a fashion photographer? I was like, because fashion photographers know how to make a lot with a little. So he was like, yo, I got the perfect scrappy fashion photographer girl. She drove down from San Francisco and stayed in my spot. And she didn't even like want to get paid. She was just down for it. Like, of course, we agreed to something pro bono like later, but like she was just like, she loved the script. And so she came and stayed in my apartment. And then basically, like, we just run and gun. We run and gun everything. We cast the movie, and we, we use lights wherever we can. 60% of the production takes place in one location, right? So there's only, and especially the location that we shoot in is very, very small. So there's only so many angles and ways you can make things look interesting. So I realized then and there that, look, this is not, I'm not going to have Wally Feister and Chris Nolan like cinematography in the movie, because I was too busy doing 14 other jobs. It was me, a DP, and sometimes a sound person, but other times the actors would be doing sound. Sometimes I would be doing sound. Sometimes I had to DP because she couldn't make it that day. Like, it was just it was a group effort. The cast was buying me food sometimes because they knew that I was like, I had nothing left. I was trying to put this thing together. So like the production process was very much, you had to really plan everything out as best as you can, and you had to turn your limitations into your assets. So basically, like, I knew that we weren't going to have amazing cinematography because we didn't have grips and lighting and all that kind of stuff, and we were going to have issues, right? So I was like, what can I control? All right, I can control how good the acting is. I can control how much time we waste, not waste, but how much time we give to doing takes. So what I did was as someone who did not do very well in cinematography class in college, I spent a lot of time rehearsing. I, am quote unquote, like what my friend told me is like, I'm an actor's director. I love working with actors and like getting into the scene and, getting into that kind of like that theater kind of like, form of acting and bring characters to life that way. So I rehearsed the hell out of every scene with all my actors. So that way, when we got there, not only did we not have to do too many takes, but when we are in editing or when someone's watching the movie, if the actors are so engaging and the acting is so good, hopefully you're not going to realize that the shot that you're looking at is overexposed by like 4,000%. So that was kind of that's kind of what I was going for there. And then so the production process was just a real, like, dude, I love my cast, and I got to shout them out. Like, they helped out. They were down for anything, ADR, reshoots, no matter what. So that the production process would pretty much grab a camera, grab some sound, rehearse the hell out of it, set up the shots, and problem solve where you can. And whatever problems came up, and we just kind of like, we all kind of stuck together and banded together. And I like, the movie was made out of Scotch tape and used condoms, but it looks good to me.
How long did you shoot for?
In terms of days, we shot for, I think, like 15 shooting days, and they were broken up into like the first time we shot was for like 6 or 7 days, and then we took a couple weeks off, and then we shot for like another 6 or 7 days, and then we had 3 days of reshoots, and then after that we did some ADR. So it was overall it was from like May or June of 2020 to like the late summer, and then after that it was just about editing, finding composer and post-production team and all that kind of stuff, and making a movie. And this movie came out of nowhere for me. I didn't even think it was going to be the way that it was, but I love this thing.
It's awesome that you're able to get something done throughout the pandemic. I can relate that it's not easy to get through a project during a worldwide shutdown. And you shot at that club, and then you edited. What was the editing process like for you? And what was one of the things I always, like the first cut of my film was quite long. What was the first cut of your film? Like, how did you go about, editing it down? And what was that first cut like? Like, was it we got a lot of material, or did you find it you hit your mark?
So the editing process is very I don't want to say unique, but like I don't like editing my own stuff unless there's a particular scene that I'm like, oh, I really got to get this one scene going. So what I would do is like, there's like X amount of scenes in the movie, and I would take like 25% of those scenes and I'd kind of edit it myself. But then the rest, I'd give to my partner and editor and genius, Mr. Paul Latza, who is an editor in Burbank. And what we would do is basically like, he is the yin to my yang. I'm very like, dude, bro, we gotta like vibes and like stuff and like, we gotta feel. And he's very like, okay, I need the files organized. Da, 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 da. So he's very like organized, really. And the editing process was basically I would edit, the scenes that I really wanted to, and then he would put them together, and then we would sit together and we would collaborate. And the first cut was about 3 hours long because we had so much improvisation. And then I realized no one was interested in the apocalypse now of open mic stand-up comedy movies. So then I was like, yeah, I should probably cut this down. And the script was, we only meant the script to be like, I mean, I wanted the movie, they always say you got to make a 90-minute comedy or you got to make a 90-minute movie, especially if it's your first feature, 90 minutes, no more than 90 minutes. And I was like, all right, we got to chop this down to 90 minutes. And then we got it down to like 2 hours and 14. And then I was like, crap, like, how are we gonna do this? And then me and the editor, we just couldn't figure out how to get it under 2 hours and 14 minutes. So I was like, all right, let's solve this the way most mature men would solve issues like this. We got a bottle of gin because he likes gin. And we just got hammered. And we started editing and chopping scenes. And we were like, we don't need that. We don't need that. And then I don't recommend this. This is not, I hope kids, especially if you are underage, do not, or if you're in film school, don't do this. Excuse me. I thought I had to sneeze. Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what's happening there. You all right?
Elephant. Yeah. So we would, so one night we just got, we celebrated with some spirits, and we somehow got the movie down to like 1 hour and 53 minutes, I think is the final runtime. And we got it down to 1 hour and 53 minutes. And I think it's like 1 hour 50 with credits. And obviously the next morning when we, woke up, we had, looked over it and we were like, okay, this, tighten this, drop, move this over here, da, 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 da. But we got it down to 1 hour and 53 minutes. And then, I would read online and I would watch these filmmaking tutorials, and I would, these kind of talking heads that tell you like how to do your first film, because you want to make sure you're doing everything the right way. And I kept seeing that number, 90 minutes, 90 minutes, 90 minutes. And I was like, crap, you know what? No one's going to want to watch this movie. Even if it's under 2 hours, no one's going to want it. It's too long. So what we did was we just brutally chopped it down to like 1 hour and 38 minutes. And then it didn't work. It was just choppy. You lost subplots. And then when you lose subplots, there was no way for us to make this movie that we made in that time frame for it to be an enjoyable experience watching it, right? So we put everything back to the way it was for the hour and 50-minute cut, hour 53 with credits. And we were like, hey, I love this movie the way it is right now. To me, this is perfect. And if the only complaint on this movie is that it's 5 to 10 minutes too long, I will live with that because I am happy with that. Because if that is, given the way production was, if the worst thing about this movie from an audience member's perspective is that it's 10 minutes too long, given how we put this thing together, then I am more than happy to say, well, I'm glad you liked it. And there you go. There you go. Because if they like it, but it's 10 minutes too long, it's perfect.
It's a brutal process. Our first cut of our feature was 2 hours 40.
Yeah.
And we had to cut down. We got to a 157, I think. So I was right there with you, and I feel your pain.
How do you feel? I know I'm not supposed to ask you questions, but how do you feel about the 90-minute kind of rule that they kind of drill into young filmmakers? Like, do you feel that's limiting?
No, I think it's correct. If you want my opinion, my movie's 15 minutes too long. and it certainly affects the ability for it to be watched, because as you're cruising through, especially in the streaming era, you're looking for content that's filling a certain gap in your viewing time that night or that day or that week. And just like in the theatrical distribution model, you have a 90-minute movie. That 90-minute movie, say if it is in the theaters, can play more than an hour and 58-minute movie. It can play more times per day. And so that's where the 90-minute comes from. That, and comedy tends to be better in a short form. And that, if you want my opinion on that, is it has a lot to do with, because I think a lot about comedy because I'm a comedian. It has a lot to do with the fact that, if you are laughing and watching a comedy, after a while, it stops being funny. You get used to it. It becomes the normal, state as a viewer. If you have some drama and your film has a lot of drama in it, that has some rise and fall, that can keep you going and keep the momentum going. But it's a challenge, and for 90 minutes, a comedy is just in and out, and it's the right length for a feature anyway, to at least in theory. Every film's different, right? To kind of keep you from getting too used to it. I remember there's one night that I went out with my wife before we got married, actually, and we went to go see Eddie Izzard, who's one of my favorite comedians. He was playing at the Largo here in Los Angeles. He's great. Also doing a night of residency at the Groundlings. So we went to see him at the Groundlings perform at like 8:00, and then we went over to Largo and watched him do, I think, a 2-hour impromptu set. He was working out the material for his next special, and it was about 3 or 4 hours of the night where we were just laughing our asses off, and it was kind of painful, to be honest. And by the end of the night, I was like, you get to Eddie's last half hour, and you're laughing, but at a certain point you're laughing and you're like, I don't really feel the laughter anymore. Now I'm just doing it because I know I have to. Because so 90 minutes actually has a lot to do with theatrical screening time and ability to schedule it, like in a film festival. The longer film, the harder it is to get screened. And for a viewer's attention span in the Netflix, Amazon era, you're trying to, okay, I can watch this for 90 minutes. That's fine. But if they go and they look, 2 hours and 30 minutes, they're like, I can't do that.
Yeah, sure.
But if you put that 2:30 into a series, they'll watch it like a million times over. So I mean,
that's true. We toyed around with that. I also, I totally agree. I think that like no one wants to see 2 hours, 2.5 hours of not another teen movie, which if your movie is straight up comedy, then 90 minutes makes sense. But like you said, you alluded to this in the fact that if there's drama, it's layered. There's there's through lines for other characters that are interesting, that the audience finds interesting. Then then we kind of bought ourselves an extra 15 minutes.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll be fine. And again, your first film. I mean, you made this is your first feature, right? As a director.
Yeah.
Congratulations. I mean, that's the hurdle you have to get through as a filmmaker. The one thing I always feel like with actors and even comedians, if you're a performer, you can go perform, you can go do a play, you can stand up, you can go any night of the week and do stand up. As a filmmaker, you got to make a movie, and that takes a lot more effort than just signing up on a wait list to get your 5-minute spot. What was the easiest part of making your movie? What surprised you? Easiest part of making the movie?
Oh man. Okay, so the easiest part of my movie is also my favorite part of the filmmaking process, and working with the actors. I kind of alluded to this earlier. Like, that's my jam, dude. That's when I'm like, athletes do this when they're in the zone. Like, there's the zone, like when you're like you see somebody blow up 50 points in a basketball game, that they're just in it. And for me, the easiest part, or like the way when I'm in my zone, is when I'm working with a scene with with actors, and where they're improving, they're like, yo, what if we try this, or what if we change this line like this, or what if my intention is more like this as opposed to that, and then we're just working, and we're doing that thing, and we got our scripts, we're making notes, and we're just chopping it up. And that to me is the easiest part, is getting a good performance out of the actors, and maybe devoid of the fact of what the audience may, the audience may look at this movie and be like, oh my god, worst acting ever, but in my head it was easy. So in my head canon, that was the best part of the filmmaking process, not only just rehearsing, But even when we were shooting, and for example, here, I'll give you one example is there was this one scene at the end of the movie, or not in the end, but in the final act of the movie, where our two main characters come to heads, right? And they have a heated discussion. And we had rehearsed that scene and for about like 3 or 4 hours the week before, and we thought we had gotten it to the place where we wanted it to be. And we were doing a couple takes, and I was like, I need it, it's missing something, right? So I suggested to one of the actors to motion physically in a particular way. I'm not going to give away, but like to get a little bit more intense, right, in a physical kind of a way, to do something. And they're like, nah, dude, we don't really want to. And they're like, oh yeah, Omar, come on, stop being dumb. This is, that's going to look corny on camera. And I'm like, guys, just trust me. Like I feel it. And they're like, we do 6 takes and they're still not doing it. They're like, what if we, they're trying to do everything except for this one suggestion that I have. Take 7, it's 1:30 a.m. Everyone's tired. I'm like, guys, just do it for me. And then if you guys don't like how it turns out in the edit, I will defer to you, right? Take 7 happens, they do it, and that's the take that we use in the film. And it's probably my favorite scene and the emotional crux of the entire movie. And the reason I bring that up is because that's just something that just happens. That's just intuition. That's just a suggestion. And those are easy things. If you follow your intuition, it's easy if you listen to yourself. And that's my favorite part of filmmaking. It's just seeing things like that, because that's free. That doesn't cost money. Everything else costs money, but getting to that space where you kind of get lost in jobs, world, finances, all that kind of stuff. You just you're like making a movie and you're working with actors and getting a performance, and that's fun to me.
Well, I think that's also, I think, some good advice of just following your instincts. That's also part of comedy, is following your instincts as a comedian. If you're always trying to control it, right, it starts to control you.
That's good advice.
What do you have any tips for filmmakers? Do you have any, like, if someone's making their first feature film, what would you say? Do this and don't do that.
What? Because I'm still looking for tips myself. I'm like, hey, well, you got any info for me? If I were to give any advice to any filmmakers starting to do their first feature, I would say, let me think about it. I would say, what? Because I'm trying to think of something that isn't said by every single person online that I actually I found valuable. You know what? For your first feature, work with people who you trust, like on a deeper level than just, oh, I know he's a good camera person, or I know they're a good actor. Work with people will show up when the chips are down. That and for me, that was friends, right? And it's not like, how they say, like, go out and just make a movie, make something, cast your friends. Like, obviously not. These are friends who are actors, but they're also people who I, in my personal life, I have relationships with. There were times when, like, like we just like there was one period where I had, I didn't sleep for 3 days, and we were shooting a scene, and they saw me like kind of like dozing off, and like I wasn't even speaking English, I was speaking gibberish. And my main the lead in the film, Austin, he said, Omar, I know how you want the scene to go. I'll direct it. Just go take a nap in the car. And I did that. And like, so that's what I would say. Like, just work with people who will be there for you, and you'll be there for them. And then that way you'll avoid all of the ookiness that can sometimes be found in the industry of like, I don't want to say contracts, because you want to protect the movie, you want to protect yourself, and every actor should protect themselves. You want to do things by the book. That's not what I'm talking about. Just kind of like the ookiness of like, of that you can sometimes find in the industry. And I think if you're working with people who will be honest with you, who will call you out, and I think that's the main thing I would, this is my main thing, is like, work with people whose opinion you value, who will also call you out when you're tripping. Because there are plenty of times, like, look, I can tell you that story about me getting a good performance out of the actors. For every one of those, there's 1,000 of, hey, Omar, that's a dumb idea. You're an idiot. And I'm like, oh, you're right. Like, there's, for every great performance I got out of an actor, there's like 10 absolutely imbecile things I tried to do that they talked me out of. So work with people whose opinion you respect and you value, so you know they know what they're talking about, and people who are not afraid to call you out, because sometimes if you're paying people, or if people are just doing it because they're just so happy to be in a movie or whatever the case may be, they may not, you know, tell you how they really think. But sometimes how they really think is the best thing for your movie. And remember that it's not about you and it's not about your ego, and it's about the movie. And you know, I had to check my ego like a bunch of times, man. There were so many times I was like, but me and my art and vision, you know, and they were like, dude, nah, this is dumb. Come on, let's keep it moving. And I was like, all right, yeah, you're right. So yeah, that's my best advice. Work with people you trust.
And check your ego at the door. That's great advice. I agree with that. That makes the world of difference, because that's especially the first feature where you have no money. You don't know what's going to happen, and
Yeah,
it's hard. And sometimes it's a skeleton crew, but it usually is. And you know that it's better to have friends around with you. I think Tina Fey once said in I think one of her books, you know, that when she's staffing, you know, for a show, it's, you know, it's who do you want to be in a hallway with at 2 a.m. You know, trying to work an idea out with, you know.
exactly. Couldn't agree more. Perfect.
Why filmmaking? Why'd you get into why'd you start making movies?
It's the only thing I ever wanted to do. There was never a plan B. That was, I just like, and I would like, I feel bad because like sometimes, you know, I got friends who are still trying to like figure out what they want to do, like after college, after they get their degree, or what kind of businesses they want to get into. And it's like, I don't, man, I wish I had like some profound answer as to why I wanted to be a filmmaker, but like, I don't know, man. It's the only thing I've ever wanted to do. I mean, I had like, you know what? No, I had this promising NBA career going for me when I was like 8 years old. I wanted to be in the NBA for about 2 weeks. So there was that, but that didn't work out because, apparently, I got a bad knee, I guess, maybe at 8. But
A little
I
short.
think, yeah. So I think when the reason filmmaking appeals to me that I can say is because like, um, I just knew that whenever I would go to the movies as a kid, it was the best part of my day. And whenever I would, get hyped to see a movie, or it was the best week I had in a month. If it was the week leading up to a big movie that I wanted to see. And I just know that watching movies was always my favorite thing to do. So I was like, why not do what's your favorite thing? And like, I love telling stories. I love listening to stories. I could listen, and I think that I just want to tell stories of things that I find interesting and hope that other people find interesting as well. Um, and that's just why I wanted to get into filmmaking, because I just wanted to talk about show people things that I think are cool, and hope in a way that they will enjoy, and hopefully they think is cool too.
I think that's a very good reason to get into filmmaking. So what's next for you? What's the next thing? What's coming up? Always some other project, I'm assuming. What's next for you?
Actually, I've been working on this thing for about 2 years, and because we didn't have a budget and everything was kind of pro bono, I was like, I only put my focus into this movie. And I have like hardcore ADHD clinically, so like I can't focus on more than like one thing at a time. And I know that's bad because everyone's always like, you got to keep writing, you got to have multiple things in the go, you got to go da, 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 da. And that's not, I can't do that. Because if I did do that, no one would be interested in reading or watching any of the things that I did. So if I want to have any sort of successful product to give to people for their enjoyment, I got to do one at a time. So I've had 2 ideas that I've wanted to do, for a while now. Normally, how I know if I want to start writing a script is I'll have an idea in my head, but I don't write it down, because if I'm still thinking about it 3 weeks later, I'll know, okay, this is something you actually really want to do. So I've had ideas come and go, and there have been these 2 ideas that I wanted to do for a very, very long time. I can't really decide which one right now. I'm kind of leaning more towards one or the other, back and forth. But I'll start writing probably sometime around the new year. I'll bust out a script, and not bust out, but I'll write a script, and I'll start looking on how to get that movie made and tell that story.
And are they comedies, or are they different?
No, one is an auto, like I would have to look into this if I'm even allowed to do it, but like one is kind of like not an autobiography, but like a period of time in one of my childhood heroes' life. Like my favorite basketball player when I was younger was Alonzo Mourning. And I've always wanted to tell the story about like how, he went from being, an all-world athlete, and in the prime of his career, he had to get a kidney transplant because he was dying from a kidney disease. He got a kidney transplant from his cousin. And then after the kidney transplant, this guy was 6'10", he was like 230 pounds or something crazy. And he couldn't even he couldn't curl a 20-pound dumbbell after a surgery because that's what happened. And then like a year later, he was back in the NBA, jacked as hell, leading the league in blocks off the bench. So like I wanted to tell the story about like that whole kind of medical issue that he went through, because I think that's like the resilience in that story is amazing. And then this other one is so that's more kind of like drama, like autobiographical. And then this other one is also a drama with kind of like a political undertone to it, but yeah, they're not comedies. I want to kind of do something a little different with every project, and I've been comedied out after my sitcom was a comedy with Fox, and then I got into stand up, and then this movie was just all about comedy. So it's like I was never into, I don't know how I got stuck into comedy for 4 years. I loved every minute of it, but I think now I'm in a place where, because I learned how to lighten the mood, because anything I did before, my sitcom was very dark, and I was trying to be Chris Nolan and all that stuff. But now that I know how to lighten, the mood a little bit, I think that was a tool I needed in my tool belt to tell stories better. So I'm gonna try and, dip into something that, something a little different.
I think you always have to have a little bit of comedy and everything. Otherwise you're just crying the whole time, and that could
Otherwise it's too similar to life. No.
Well, Omar, thank you for taking some time to talk with us. And your movie MiCERZ is going to be playing here at the Valley Film Festival, and screening times and locations and all that will be below this video. So go check it out and see it. And congratulations on getting into the film festival, man. Welcome here.
Thank you, and thanks you guys for interviewing me. And also, if you guys please come to the Valley Film Festival to see this movie, because this is the only time that I know of that this movie will be played in the theater. And I'm telling you, this movie is so much fun to watch with other people in a theater. It's night and day. Comedy is not the same when you watch it from your TV. It's supposed to be shared with people. Buy a ticket, come through, check it out. You'll have a blast.
Yeah, and that is so important, by the way. So we premiered at Valley, Boris and the Bomb, and and some of my cast were like, well, I'll come and check it the next time it's screening. And then the pandemic hit. So don't take anything for granted. Go see it right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right now.
Check it out.
Yeah. Go find it. Go see it here at the Valley Film Festival. Thank you so much.